everyone, let's grab our seats. It's officially 8:30 p.m. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Ron and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome home. And woo, what a holiday weekend. And we got the world's greatest chairwoman all the way in from southern Canada. Let's give Kara a warm welcome.
Good evening, y'all. Welcome home. My name is Kara, and I am an alcoholic. Hello. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, Doylestown, PA. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. and speaker at 8:30 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. Please come early and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
Laura, alcoholic.
Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Sean, alcoholic.
Hi, Sean. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with the working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Our sister group is a big book study meeting that meets every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. just up the street at Salem UCC Church, 186 East Court Street, Doylestown. Coffee is on at 6:15 p.m. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purpose of the big books to help those who cannot afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Books and CD Donations. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and our Facebook group. Subscribe and share. You can find our speakers there. Join our Facebook page to keep informed, and you can share upcoming events and meetings. Now, I'd like to enter a good friend of mine, Thomas. He's going to come up and read Just for Today, Prayer of Recovery. Woo! Let's give him a warm welcome! Woo!
Good evening, everyone. I'm Thomas, and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome home. This is the Just for Today prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And with that, would you be able to help me welcome up Alcohol Nick to the stand for the preamble?
My name's Nick, I'm an alcoholic, aka Alcohol Nick. Welcome home, everybody, and thank you for the flaming Cajun Canadian. Okay. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And now with that, we have another young, handsome fellow, Brian, to come up and read the 12 Steps of Recovery. Please give Brian a warm welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. Welcome home. These are the 12 steps of recovery. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. With that, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to the lovely Kara. She's going to come up here and introduce our speaker for tonight. Thank you.
Our 7th tradition states, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover food, rent, big book CDs, events, workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I'd like to introduce the speaker as a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Let's give Chelsea, she came all the way from Feasterville, a warm welcome. Wow!
I'm Chelsea, I'm an alcoholic. Teddy said the worst part was me getting up the steps, and then after that I wouldn't be nervous anymore, which isn't quite true. I'm still a little bit nervous. So normally I don't talk about my childhood when I'm telling my story, but I have a long time, so I'll start there. So my parents, so it took them 10 years to have me. I was like a miracle baby. When my mom found out she was pregnant, she went to my dad. She said, "Hey, I've got news." And he said, "Me too." And she said, "You go first." And he said, "I want a divorce." And so then she tells him, that she's pregnant. And so he was raised Mormon. They actually met in a Mormon church. But he wanted to stay in the marriage with my mother until I turned 18. He was really just against the idea of a broken home. And so I was almost, I feel like I was almost born with this hypersensitivity and almost this awareness of the contention. And I remember I was about 4, and I asked my dad, "Why don't you tell mommy that you love her the way that you tell me?" And he said, "I like your mom, I don't love her, and when you turn 18, I'm leaving." And so from a very young age, I was an anxious child. I felt like I was walking on eggshells. I knew that I was the glue holding the family together. Every conversation kind of had to be centered around me, or they were fighting. So I also adopted the belief that attention equals love. So that proved to be a little detrimental later on in life. And somewhere around 5 or 6, I remember having the thought how sad it is that my parents waited so long to have a baby and they got stuck with me. And so like, basically, like little Chelsea needed a drink before she knew what a drink was, you know? Like I was just bedeviled. And like that way of thinking stayed with me, stayed on me, you know, and really just grew. And I started, I guess, you know, like experimenting, like I would get a little buzzed at like 14. 16 was the first time that I got like really drunk. It was a blackout drunk. And I remember I was like hanging out with some people, and it was just chaos, right? Like one of my friends had a seizure. We were like at a playground, because that's what you do when you're 16, you know, you like drink at a playground. And she had a seizure. Someone called their dad, who like worked with like the fire department. So then we hear like all these sirens, and it's like police, ambulance, fire trucks, everything. They took my one friend who had had the seizure. Another one of my friends rode in the ambulance with her. Somehow she like fell over in such a way that she broke her wrist. I don't remember what me and the other kids did after that, other than like continue drinking, but somehow all of us ended up at my one friend's house the next morning. None of us knew how we got there. The one girl had a cast, and like that was the moment, you know? That was like, I want to do this all the time. So as you can imagine, it progressed pretty quickly. And I would say by 19, it was like full-blown torture, you know? It was like hell on earth already. And I started to kind of do this, it was like a circle of rehabs and recovery houses and, you know, jails and all that kind of good stuff, you know? And there was one time that I always think really describes like the powerlessness. But I had been in Liberté. So actually, I went to a rehab because I had a warrant out, and that was kind of like my MO. And they had asked me if I wanted to go to another program afterwards, which like of course I did, because in my head this is just like time served, you know? So I went to another program, and then at that program they recommended that I go to Liberté, which is like a 6-month halfway house in Bensalem. And so at this point I'm just doing everything to just, you know, get more treatment under my belt, so when I do see my PO it'll look like, you know, I'm trying. And so at the end of that, I had 8 months of consecutive treatment. I'd been sober for the longest that I'd ever been sober. I got a sponsor. I, you know, was doing the steps. I didn't have an experience, but I didn't know it at that time. You know what I mean? I learned a lot of information about myself is really what happened. And I could explain things to other people. Everything started to make sense. And I really thought something was happening. And so I get out of that program, and while I was there, actually, my PO had come to visit me, and she said, you can either come with me now and I'll take you to Bucks County Correctional Facility, or you can stay at this program and sign this stip that if you violate again, it's a mandatory 3.5 to 7 years. And at this point, I'm like cocky, you know? And I was like, yeah, I'll sign this stip, like no problem. Like I just did not understand really what I suffered from. And I I thought I did, you know, like you know, when you talk about like powerlessness and unmanageability, you know, in a lot of ways that's very apparent, but I still had this idea that I could like manage and control. And if I stay off the hard stuff, that I'll be okay. So like really this whole time in the experience that I had was like, you know, off of what I thought was the problem, and I can still do other stuff like successfully. And so anyway, so I get out of this program, and the guy that I was with at that time, I would have told you he was the love of my life. In reality, he was just like a glorified running partner. But he had been locked up, and his charges were dropped, so he was like suddenly let out of jail. And I was at a meeting, and they were talking about the third step promises, and I raised my hand and I shared about this freedom that I felt, and like I meant it with every fiber of my being, you know? And I leave this meeting and I get a call from him that he's out, and it was like autopilot. And none of us said anything, you know, we didn't talk about like, are we gonna go drink or not? We just went straight to the bar, you know? And on the way back, I was kind of like fading in and out of consciousness. And what I remember is saying that I was so remorseful and I was so afraid. Because I knew that I was gonna be back in that cycle again, right? And like a normal person could say that, you know, you've been sober for 8 months, you drink one time, you know? But like, I knew that I was gonna be a slave to this again. I knew that I was gonna have a warrant, I was probably gonna end up homeless, like I just knew all of this stuff was gonna happen again. So like, I'm crying and saying like, how ashamed I am and how afraid I am. But he told me that I was also begging him to turn around and go back, and that we needed to get more. And like that right there in a nutshell is just like what my alcoholism looked like. And so that was 2012. And then a year later, so in 2013, it's basically like the same sort of thing. I go running to rehab because I'm scared of like the legal repercussions. And I go there, and I had asked my mom, I said, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to do like detox, or do you want me to stay the full time? And she had said, baby, you've been gone so long, I just want you home with me. And that was like a weird, like I in the moment, I was like, that's kind of strange, you know, like she always wants me to go away for as long as possible. And so I go into this place, and then I wasn't allowed to use my phone or anything. And I think it was like a 5-day blackout from the phone. So once I'm able to call my mom, it just goes straight to voicemail. And I keep calling, and I knew like my mom and I had this very like codependent sort of relationship. And like I just knew that she would be like waiting by the phone. So I called her work, and they said that she hadn't come into work that day. And I ended up calling the apartment complex, and they had someone from maintenance come in the apartment, and they had found her, and she was dead. She died very suddenly. And like I'm in this rehab. At this point, I'm 25, but like not really, you know? I've never worked a day in my life. I'm completely dependent on my mother. She's my best friend. She's my everything. And I was a mess for about a week, you know? Like I couldn't stop crying, and I would go to bed and I would think there's no way I'm gonna sleep tonight. But then I would just kind of like pass out because it's exhausting to cry that much all day. And then I would wake up in the morning with like still tears coming down my face. And then after about a week, one day I woke up and I looked in the mirror, and I was like, you know what, like my mom wouldn't want me to feel like this. And I just shoved it down. And at the time, I thought that was like so healthy, right? But that was just such a trauma response. Like I couldn't feel anything. I had no coping mechanisms. I had no real support in my life. I just didn't know what else to do. And I felt like I could either feel it and like die or just like shove it away and survive. And that was like the best that I could do at that time. And, you know, I finished the rehab program. I go to a recovery house and I'm there for about 3 weeks and then I pick back up. And people would say things like, of course you picked up, like your mom just died. And that sounded really reasonable to me and I wanted them to feel bad for me, I guess, you know? But like the truth is that after, like when I first found out, like what I said to myself was like, I will never drink again. I will never disrespect her memory. And I even like, I don't know, I really believed that I would never pick up again because of what happened. So I allowed people to say that, but like I knew that that wasn't true. And so at that point, I get kicked out of the recovery house. They tell me that I can come back in 3 days with a clean urine, which proved to be incredibly impossible. I tried for like probably like 2 or 3 months. I would come back literally every 3 days. And I could never not drink for 3 days in a row. And so after that, it was like just homelessness, you know? And so I guess I should go back to, so a little bit before this, my dad did end up leaving. And he moved, he got a place in like Jenkintown, somewhere around there. And I, at one point, the cops were looking for me. They went to my mom's house, I wasn't there. So I went to my dad's house, forgetting that my PO had his address too. So anyway, I come to his house and the door's locked, all the lights are on, and I can see that like the lamps on the floor and there's like just stuff everywhere. And so the cops had come there looking for me, and he had never even had a traffic ticket in his whole life. So he said, you can't enter my house unless you have a search warrant, which like is not true, right? That's like some Law and Order kind of stuff. Like you think that's true. But if they have a body warrant and have any reason to believe that I'm in that house, they can do whatever they want. And so he's just being like, you know, my prideful dad. And they thought that he was like hiding something or hiding me. And so they ended up kind of like getting physical with him, and they accidentally broke his collarbone. And they arrested him for assault on an officer, resisting arrest, and something about reaching for their gun. So my dad had lost his job, taken out his 401k. Eventually that ran out. He had been an IT guy like my whole life, and he was 60 years old at this time, so he couldn't find another job doing what he was doing. And so he was kind of like forced into retirement, and at 60 years old, he moved back home with his mom in Ohio. And then a couple months after that is when my mom passed away. So, like I am, like, I ruined his life, you know what I mean? Like truly that's like, I am just like, when they say a tornado, like I am a tornado, and the closer you get to me, the like worse that you're going to be affected. And so I had, you know, my two parents who like, they were not a good example of a relationship at all, but they loved me very much, and I always had this kind of like safety net. And so when I, you know, get kicked out of this recovery house, and I'm experiencing homelessness, it's also just like I had never not had like my mom and my dad trying to absorb all of my consequences. And like in Bill's story, when he says the mind and body are a marvelous mechanism, like that's what I think about when I think about those 2 years of being homeless, of like how much pain and agony I endured over those 2 years. And I would say that being homeless was more difficult than being in jail. And eventually, I turned myself in, not because I wanted to be sober. I just didn't want to live like that anymore. And that's how you like know it's bad, right? I remembered that I had a warrant, and I was like, oh, I have somewhere to go. And so I turned myself in, and I had signed that stip for 3.5 to 7 years. And that sounded reasonable when I was drunk, you know? And then I wake up in the jail and I'm like, oh my God, like what did I just do? And so I went to court and I was offered drug court, which I had always kind of been told was a setup. But I am very grateful for that program now. But so I got out after like 10 months. I went to a recovery house in New Britain, and I was on this program that's kind of like if like Bucks County Probation and like the CIA had a baby. Like it's really crazy. Like you have to call this number every day and they tell you if you have a urine or not. I had like 4 random urines a week. I had to go to court once a week. I had to see a probation officer once a week. Everything's mandatory. You know, you have to sign all your meeting logs and you have to go to therapy. And if you're late to therapy, you go to jail for 24 hours. It's like a very intense program, but it's also like all of the things that people have suggested to me for so long are now mandatory. And so before I got out on the drug court program, I met with this lawyer who, there was like an application process that I had to do for drug court, and he called me back in his office before I got out and he said, you missed a page of the application. And he showed it to me and it was like your support network, like who are positive supports in your life. And I was like, oh no, I didn't miss that. I left that blank on purpose. And he was like, you're 26 years old and you don't have anybody in your life who supports you. And I was like, no. And he started crying, and I remember thinking like, I'm the one in jail with like no one, just like, why are you crying? If anyone should be crying, it's me. And I found out later that his nephew had actually just killed himself, and his nephew was 26 years old. And so he really played a big part in like convincing me to get out and just try, you know? And it was really cool because I was able to see him later, but so I have always said that like my first year of sobriety was completely based off fear. And I said that for years. And now I think that really what had happened was in that time, it was the first time that I actually valued my life and my freedom. And that I didn't know those feelings and I didn't know how to express those feelings. The only thing that I was familiar with was fear. That was the only thing I could identify. But like really like fear and shame, they don't motivate me for too long. You know, eventually like those are the things that cause me to drink. So I really was so broken. And I just ran around and I just did everything that everybody told me to do. And, you know, for the most part, that consisted of like going to a lot of meetings, you know? I mean, I did have a sponsor, but the sponsor, like, we got to step 4. I had 2 people on my resentment list. We got to step 9. Both of those people were still drinking. She said we don't make amends to people who are still actively drinking. So we went right into 10, 11, and 12, and I'm like sponsoring people. And I had about a year sober, and I started just like getting really, like I kind of like isolated myself a little bit. I was just like sad, and like I would listen to like the Jewel station on Pandora a lot and like try to force myself to cry. And like I had friends in the recovery house that I would hang out with all the time, and then like all of a sudden it was like, no, I don't want to. I want to lay here and like hope that I cry. Like I would put my head in the pillow and try like scream and try to just force like tears to, like, it was very dramatic, you know? And I called this woman that I saw at a bunch of the meetings in the area, and she was always just like so lit up, and I called her. And I was like, I don't know, man, like getting a year was like my goal, you know? And like I have a year, and like this is how I'm feeling, like is this normal? And she was like, no. Like, no, like you should not feel that way. And so what happened was I started working with her. I showed her that same 4-step of the 2 people on there. She laughed in my face. And I was just like a traumatized little like bird, you know what I mean? Like I had no insight, I couldn't see anything. I really believed, like I would say all the time, it is what it is. And like I thought that I was saying something, but like that's just like a trauma response, right? Like that's not saying, like I was just not connected to any of my feelings or anything. And so I just couldn't see beyond like these 2 people who I felt really, really betrayed me. And like, I'm not angry at anyone else, like no one else disappointed me, I got no one else to put on there, like it is what it is, you know, like I shouldn't have trusted anyone, I shouldn't have, like whatever. So I sat down with this woman, and she went back from like high school and had me explain all of my friendships, all of my relationships, like I would have to talk to her about each one of these things, and then she would tell me if I had a resentment in connection with them. Like, God bless her, because it took a very long time. But once we would identify a resentment, then she had me go out and find them and like make amends to them. So like, for me, the freedom was experienced in making those amends. You know, so my dad was like a big one, because it's so crazy what my alcoholism does, but like I had kind of like made him the bad guy, like he was like the villain, you know? And I was mad that like he still had his mom and I didn't. I was mad that like I was closer to my mom and she wasn't here, and I thought that like his love for me was conditional. I don't know, I just created this whole storyline in my head. And she got me a plane ticket to go down, because he was living in Ohio. So she got me a plane ticket to go down and see him and like make face-to-face amends with him. And that was the first time that it was like proven to me that like my alcoholism just separates me, and it creates these delusions, and I will like dress them up and like wear them like it's like a costume, you know, like I will just believe this thing. And like I believe that he didn't really care about me, which is like so insane, right? Like and when he saw me, he started crying, and he said how healthy I had looked. And I hadn't seen him in a long time, you know, like since my mom had passed away. And so when she was getting the plane tickets, she originally was going to do like 5 days, and I was like, absolutely not. Like I haven't seen him in like almost 5 years. I can't spend 5 days there. And so she did it for 2 days. And when I was leaving, I started crying. And I was like, when am I going to see you again? You know what? Like, and this was a person that like I didn't want to see. I didn't feel like loved me. I didn't, like 2 days felt like a lot, you know? And like as I was hugging him goodbye after making the amends to him, like it was like this wall just kind of like disappeared. And like I made an effort to rebuild that relationship with him. And like after that, it was like all of my relationships, like I wasn't able to connect with anyone. Like I couldn't really like give or receive love. Like everything was very much this like intellectual statement of like, that's my dad, I love him. That's my friend, I love her. But I couldn't feel anything, you know? And like the amends, like each amends, like connected me a little bit more and more to like each of you. And like I was so cold when I first got into that recovery house. Like there was like this one girl, she was leaving the living room, like going up to her bedroom, and she was like, all right, good night, I love you. And I was like, don't you tell me that you love me. Like, you don't know what love is. Like, if I were to leave this house right now, you would forget about me. You wouldn't care. Like, I had a mother who loved me and would have searched the ends of the earth to find me if I disappeared. So, like, maybe you don't know what love is, but I, like, whatever. And it's just like, that's like insane, right? Like, that's like such a harmless thing. Like, but like a hug or like, I love you or anything like that just made me like bristle. And so with each of the amends, like all of that kind of just like faded away, and I was able to feel like a closeness with people. And then like with sponsoring people, like it just felt more like effective. And like I would have never ever thought that by making amends to somebody that would allow me to forgive myself. And that like sitting down and doing this work with another woman would be like what would give me confidence, you know? And like my whole life, all I ever needed was like comfort and confidence. And so like around a year and a half sober, like I really just started to, and it's like a transformation, you know, like other people can see it before you even see it. And so I would say like from years like 1 to 2, there was just like drastic change in me. Like, and then you couldn't like hold me back. Like I was going to a million meetings, I was sponsoring a million people, like thought I was gonna save the world. Like I feel like nothing is more insufferable than like me at 2 years sober. Like and it's like a natural, like, I feel like it has to happen to all of us, but like it was just like, I look back now and it's like mortifying, you know? And like all these things started to happen that I never thought would happen. Like I would go to meetings and I would like just spew my sickness everywhere about like how I have all these court costs and like my license is suspended and like I'll never be able to get this stuff back and I'll never be able to get out of this recovery house and like just all of these things, you know? And like little by slowly, all of these things that I thought would never happen like started to happen. And like that my third step experience like grew off of that. And like nothing happened in like a cute, like glamorous way or the way that I would, you know, hope or wish that it would happen. Like my recovery house, so I graduated from drug court, and I was able to see that guy, the drug court lawyer. I was able to see him like later on down the road and like thank him for encouraging me to take that program and tell him that I have so many people in my life that support me now. And so I'm in this recovery house and they're telling me at the recovery house, like, we think you should go, you know, like, we think you're ready to go. And I was like, well, yeah, me too. But like, I am afraid, like, I was so afraid to get my own place or to move out. And this house literally caught on fire. It caught on fire and we were like displaced and put in this little, like hotel suite, which cost so much more money than the recovery house itself. And I'm staying there and like 2 of the girls who were my friends are like, they're not talking to me. And I'm like, why do they hate me? And like, then I found out that they were using heroin and it like wasn't about me at all. And like, I'm like staying in this environment. It's like 5 of us in this little room. And my sponsor she had picked up another girl that she was sponsoring and she picked me up. We were going to a meeting. And this girl was talking about getting out of rehab and they wanted her to go to a recovery house, but she had her apartment and couldn't break her lease. And I'm talking about like, I want to get out of this recovery house, but I'm too afraid. And she called me like later that night and she was like, I haven't stopped thinking about it. And like, if you want to move in with me, like, I think that would be great, which is so insane, right? Like she was like fresh out of rehab. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. She moved her dining room set into her garage and like moved me in the dining room. And I like stayed there for a year. She was like a chronic relapser, eventually she ended up going to like long-term treatment. And like my fear is always like this financial fear. Like I'm gonna be homeless again and I'm gonna, you know? And so she goes to treatment and I'm like, where am I gonna go? What am I gonna do? And then like someone asks me to stay with them, that they have an extra room at their house. So it's like all these things happen and I think like this is it, you know, like I'm never gonna withstand this. And then like somehow like something just opens up for me. And like like at one point it's like so crazy, but my license was still suspended, so I'm walking to work. I am crossing the street. I get hit by a car, like on my person, like an SUV hits me, and I flip on top of the car, and I was actually fine, which is astounding, but he slammed on his brakes, and I flew off the hood of the car, and my head landed on the road and like just splattered open, and I'm like laying in a pool of my own blood, and the ambulance comes. And the first thing I say to them is like, I'm in recovery, you can't give me anything. And like, that's like a life beyond my wildest dreams, you know? And like, this is like at a point where like, I'm comparing myself so deeply to other people. I'm like, it shouldn't look this way. I should have these things. It should be like this, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And like, I didn't notice that the miracle was like happening already, you know? And so, whatever, that was like a whole insane thing. And I was like hurt, but not nearly as bad as I could have been. But a few years later, I ended up getting like a settlement for that, and I was able to pay off all of the court costs and all of these things that I used to say, like, I'll never be able to pay, like, and so like, that's not ideal, right? Like I try, like, I'm like getting sober and I try to imagine like how all of this stuff is gonna work out. Like, how can I possibly make it out of this? And like, I will never be able to like, to make this stuff up or to be able to plan it or anything like that. But like somehow, some way, even if it's super painful, like everything that I've ever needed has been provided for me. And, at like 5 years sober, it was like during COVID. And I went through the work again with somebody else. I had a really cool experience with her, which was really helpful too, because I had looked at everything as very black and white, and she was able to take me through, and that there's so much gray in this stuff, you know? And so she was able to take me through in a completely different way and just show me some new things and like a whole new perspective on this program. And, I would say like around 6 years sober, like I got like pretty dark. And I got like obsessed with the idea of, like it shouldn't look like this, and I should have more, and I should have these things. And I started, like I was going on like dating apps, which is such a normal thing for a normal person, like not me. I lost my mind on these things. And like you would think like just stop doing it. Can't. Like I can get addicted to anything, you know? And it's just like reaffirming all of these old beliefs that like no one's gonna stay, and I'm just still doing it, you know? And like I literally lost my mind. So I ended up meeting someone like on this dating app who seemed to be like very sane and stable, and like there were warning signs even on the first date, you know, and like I just ignored them because I had this idea of like what it's supposed to look like, you know, and like there was like some paranoia, and I would make excuses for him of like all the things he's been through, you know, of course he's paranoid. And, you know, so like what transpired was like his mental health was progressive, just like how my alcoholism was. And there would be periods of psychosis. They would normally last about 2 weeks. And then he would kind of come out of it, and he would like never admit that it didn't happen. But he would kind of come back to like some sort of sanity, you know? And like towards the end, he was like in this psychosis and did not come out. Like it was months. And you know, on my end, what I can say is like what's been shown to me is like, it's amazing the things I'll do and the places I'll stay when I get really dark and I mix the beliefs of like, I'm not good enough and I just want to be loved together. Like, it's amazing how long I'll stay in the most uncomfortable situation where like there were times that I was afraid for my life. Like, it was a ticking time bomb. I knew it, I could feel it. I knew something bad was gonna happen. I felt almost like I was kidnapped or something, but that's not the case, right? Like, I have free will, but like I am so in it and I am so blocked off from God. And like, I'm still sponsoring women, which is like insane. And like one of my sponsees actually like really like saved me. Like she, it's just, she really, really helped me a lot. And I'm sure that she helped me more than I helped her. And then he starts saying things like, you have an hour and 20 minutes to go to a meeting, like you have like 10 minutes to get there, 10 minutes to get back, that should be fine. So I'm like at my home group and they say there's a business meeting and I'm like terrified, like he's gonna be so mad. And then like I started to kind of like separate myself, like I'm showing up and I'm going through the motions, but I'm not getting anything out of anything because I can't, like I'm in such a dark place. And so what happens is when you separate yourself for an extended period of time, like people don't show up the way that they used to, you know? And he would say like, these people aren't your friends, they don't really care about you. And I would start to think like, yeah, maybe you're right, like they don't really care about me. And so like from 6 to 8 years sober, I am as sober as I'm ever gonna get, and I am just as dark as when I like first came into this program. The literal only thing that is saving me is that I never stopped like sponsoring other women, because I think I would have absolutely picked up if I had stopped doing that. And so he's like in this psychosis, and his paranoia kind of attaches on someone who like also probably had some like unchecked mental health issues, and he ends up like he's shot and killed outside of the house. And so it's like I have the grief of losing him, and then also like this like sense of freedom at the same time. And like, I don't know how to navigate that, right? And like, so they take me to the police station, they're asking me questions. When I come out, I'm thinking like, this is it. Like, I'm going to be alone, and I'm going to have to go back to this apartment with all his stuff and just like be completely on my own. And I walked out of the police station, and 4 of my friends from AA were standing outside of there, and like no one ever left me like after that. Like there was just always like, there was like a shared calendar of like whose day it is to be with Chelsea, and they just like carry me, and I'm like going to meetings and I'm sobbing and I'm just like moving my feet. They're literally hand feeding me at certain times. And like, that is why like I think that there's one solution in Alcoholics Anonymous, but there's 2 different parts to it. And there is like the God reliance, which is crucial, right? But there's also the fellowship. And there's times when I will literally need the fellowship. I will need them to pick me up and carry me from point A to point B. And like, thank God I created this network of friends, and like I did this stuff before this happened, because I don't know how I would have survived it. And it was maybe like a month later, I'm like writing inventory, and like I'm going through this work again with my sponsor, and like I'm writing inventory on like the man who shot him. And like, it's the most insane thing, you know, like I went through like a period of hatred and like afraid that I was gonna lose myself, and I kind of like walked through this work and came to the other side, and like was able to see something like that from a different perspective. And like there is no hate in my heart, and like and I have just been able to like recreate my life a second time in sobriety like from years 9 to 10, like God willing, all of 10 years on October 17th. But there has been a completely new spiritual experience. There has been a completely new surrender. And like, you know, part of the reason, like I would think that, like when I would think about leaving him and I would get really afraid, like my other thought would be like, well, I'll never find anyone else, or I'll never have anything else. And like I would look at my other friends' relationships and I'd be like, well, I don't really want that either. And like, at least he loves me, and like I'll just stay here. And like I had all of these beliefs, right? And like literally within a year, my life was tore apart and put back together better than I could have ever imagined it. And you know, I will never do another dating app because that was horrific. And I feel like there's something to meeting somebody organically and knowing a little bit about their history, and like that maybe that they're like schizophrenic before dating them. So I was just thinking like, I'll never meet anyone, like I can never do a dating app, like, you know, all these fears and whatever. And so for my home group, they were talking about like our anniversary party, and that they wanted to get a speaker from like out of state. And they had said maybe someone from like New Jersey or Delaware. And I met Teddy like 3 years ago. We were at a workshop. And this was when, at one point I had gotten I got a PFA against this guy. I like, as soon as it ended, I like moved back in with him, whatever, it was crazy. But I had gotten back with him and I knew that I shouldn't have. And I'm like at this workshop, and he was speaking in a way that was so honest and so vulnerable, almost in a self-deprecating way. And I thought like, I wish I could be with someone like that, because I was with someone who like couldn't take any accountability. And so I had spoken for him in Delaware a couple times over the last 3 years. And so I thought like, I'll call this guy and see if he can speak for our meeting. And he had recently been given direction that if someone asks you to speak, to say no and to tell them that it's really messing with you, and like, you know, you're getting like anxious before and after and whatever. So he explained that to me, and like we haven't stopped talking since. And we got engaged. And I think what's really important to me is that, like, you know, a couple years ago, I was obsessed with the idea that like some sort of love or some sort of a relationship would make me feel better, or like it's supposed to look this certain way and it's supposed to be like this. And like, that is just so far from the truth, right? Like I was able to like go through this work and like reconnect with the people that were my friends, and like, you know, reconnect with God, and like start really sponsoring people, you know, and this is the first time that I've ever kept God in the middle of a relationship before ever. So it's not that like some outside thing makes me feel better. It's that like I have been able to like recreate my life again and be centered in God, and like have this other person as a bonus to just make my life like a little bit more full, you know? And we were actually at a meeting last night, and someone was talking about how like this, like sobriety is not this like linear thing, and that like we're not always, you know, excited to go out and to do this work, or to like write inventory, or to pick up the phone when a sponsee calls. And like that's, you know, a way that we can kind of tell that we're getting dark is when like we kind of like don't want to do this stuff. And then eventually in some way it causes us pain. And he was saying that he was talking to someone who had 35 years, and he asked her, does that stop? Like at some point, does that stop? And she said, I hope not, you know, because like pain is the only way that we grow. And, you know, like I've had a new transformation recently, and like, you know, we can be like, there can be so many more transformations ahead of me, and like hopefully it doesn't have to look as destructive or as insane as it did, but like pain is what really connects us back to the source, you know. And like no matter what, I feel like even when I'm really dark, like I have always thought like I need to find somebody to help. I have never thought, you know, since I got sober this time, that like a drink would be like an answer or a relief or whatever. Like in that sense, I've been restored to sanity. In many other ways, I am completely insane. But like a drink or a drug is not a solution anymore. And it's like, go help God's kids, you know? And yeah, that really just, you know, it gets me through everything. And I think the most important thing is like there is nothing that I can't withstand as a sober woman. I can walk through anything. And like, you know, the pain and the, you know, all the hard stuff and the bad stuff, like inevitably if you stay sober long enough, like something's gonna hit you. But like there is growth on the other side of that, and we can literally walk through anything. So like even though stuff feels awful, like there is hope through every single moment of every single thing. And I feel like it is just like my responsibility to share, you know, like honestly, that like my sobriety has been insane and like at times just as traumatic as my alcoholism, right? But like I am a sober woman and I am free, and when I am connected to the source again and helping his kids, like there is a happiness and a joy and a usefulness that is available to me. And the only reason it isn't is because I listen to my own mind again instead of what has been shown to me over and over to be true, you know? And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks very much.
My name's Nick, I'm an alcoholic. That's powerful stuff. Please give Chelsea another round of applause. Thank you for such honesty and your vulnerability. That was truly magnificent, so thank you. We're at the end of the meeting, so I'd like to thank, let's start with the coffee maker, Michelle, back there in the kitchen. Thank you for your service. We give some help cleaning up. We put all the chairs away. We leave around eight chairs around the tables in the back. It's customary to form a line. Our speakers come at their own time and expense, so we usually form a line here in the front and thank them on a personal level. If you're struggling or suffering, please, by all means, stay after the meeting. We're here for a while, breaking down the meeting. Get with somebody. If you need help, please let us know how we can help you. So if you care to join us, we'll circle up and close with the Lord's Prayer. Okay, we'll have a brief moment of silence. Followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our